and welcome to the New World Review, where we are chickens. Not ants, but chickens. What do I mean by chickens? I'm glad you asked me. We are chickens, for we are afraid to act in the way that is necessary to be able to get to where we want or need to be. How do we stop being chickens? We fight kids when they're already exhausted. That's how we do it. Let's get into it. Shoot? Yeah, shoot. Okay. I kind of feel for him. The language the narrator used, then the subtitling was so simple. He's a coward. I felt for him immediately. Maybe he should just give up. How does a coward become a hunter? And this is one of those things, this is one of those things that I get frustrated about with Hunter x Hunter, because it's really hard to believe that someone who is a coward would be able to go into the hunter exam and come out a hunter, given the competition that can happen. For him to have made it through the exam, everyone else would have had to be awful. And it's already been stated somewhere or in my head, I don't know, I might have made it up. I do that sometimes, that some years no one passed. And if that's the case, how did he pass? What did he do that made him worthy of that license? What does his nen do, and how did he navigate all the issues that come with being an example of such a broken group of people? I suppose just being broken is kind of the point. Maybe he becomes explosively angry and hulks out, but until I've seen him do this thing, I consistently struggle with the "but how did this person get this far" issue that comes up every episode or two. Leaving behind my sweaty, sad coward boy, who I feel more protective over than I thought I might, Gon is of course making friends with what's-her-face, with the purple aura and their desperation to kill people to go to her love and savior, that other guy on the mountainside. Something I am enjoying with her. I don't have a name for her. It's okay for now. Despite the two-dimensional nature of her and my lack of understanding about exactly why she wants to kill them if they fail, when she could take the pieces she needs and go deal with the problem herself, it just seems... Anyway, despite that, what I love about her is her color scheme. Up to now, we've seen purple used to denote internally driven thoughts and feelings. We've seen it used to halt action and to show that the characters have an internal world. Well, in this character here, and I'm going to call her Single, because, yeah, Single is singling out her thoughts and making the internal external enough that others can read it, resulting in the aura that's troubling Bisky, despite the fact that she has no real desire to kill Bisky. Her perception and her speech, even her eyes are that purple, and since the eyes are the window to the soul, we could suggest that, metaphorically, the others can see her thoughts through her eyes too. And I love that, because I love a metaphor me. She reminds me very, very heavily of Salad Fingers, and I wouldn't be surprised to find that there was an element of inspiration one way or the other. The similarities down to the interaction with a knife are remarkable. Her relationship with Gon is growing the way Salad Fingers' relationships grew too, but with more grotesque romantic comedy. Who doesn't want to see Single having difficulty killing them because of a pinky promise from possibly the only person to touch her since who knows when? That each of the guys on site, Sooty McSoothead and Teeny Glassy Boy, teeny glassy biggie nosy, I don't know, like that guy, have these specific oddballs as their students. It's great because they're actually pretty damn normal, and that normality and their boredom even is needed to balance up the extremity of the situation Gon and Killua are facing. The things I noticed in this episode were less emotional and a lot more technical. Another of those technical loves was the art style change between when the ants were in the forest to the simulated world and how that transition happened. The puff of smoke was a delight to the eyes. Both the art and the animation of the concept were delightful, and the fact that the appearance of the portal on the other side was so geometric, so clean cut, there is a very clear distinction to the environments, and I am a huge fan of artists shifting art styles to portray experiential and emotional changes. It's one of the reasons people love anime, right? There's so much that can happen in held frames that the specific length of a held frame without any change can evoke as much emotion as detailing an animation but keeping the models breathing throughout. Meanwhile, we have a brick shit house of an ant appear. Given the softness of all the other two, menthol pea is really necessary for stereotype reasons. I don't really have an opinion on him yet, but I do have a lot of interest in the puppeteering occurring on Kite, I believe it was. It's showing the need to practice with him before they go out and try to use him in public, and that's both horrific in the sense that they're using his body as a plaything, but expected, because how else are you going to get the outcomes you want? Meanwhile, we have the king, who is not yet ready, but all his guards have appeared. His hat is still solidly on his head, I checked. Whether it will grow further, we don't know, but he's growing, and I'm hoping we don't have a queen anti-climax when he does appear, given how long it's taking the arc to establish. It's looking like this one might be the longest, though I also have time blindness, and so maybe I'm totally underestimating the amount of time the previous arcs took to develop and play out. Either way, I want to know more. So let's get into episode 89, where Gon has found out he has some weaknesses to his simple answer to the simple question of how to fight everyone he comes across. Because, his simple answer is just punch him, innit? So Gon now has a name for his attack, which I really truly did think was just called scissors, paper, rock, because he said it every time. I thought that was how it worked. And now he has an even sillier name, but it works perfectly for him. With this episode, we dug further into Killwa's insecurities and inner thoughts, and now I'm wondering whether we don't often go into Gon's thoughts because he lives so much in the present, and without being concerned about what might happen as a consequence of his behavior. There's no point to us hearing what's in his head because he says what he's thinking soon enough. Meanwhile, Killwa is constantly preparing to be Gon's medic or ambulance and get him out of situations that he might be stuck in. He's very protective of Gon, but is that going to be enough given the effect of trauma that's been all he knows for so long? And I'm not sure. I know that some of that is bias. Some of my knowledge of this is biased because I've been mildly spoiled on the fact that Killwa will leave at some point, but I have no idea when that is or why. This seems like a really strong potential, though if it's what happens, I'm not sure how I'll take it, to be honest. What is fascinating is the suggested similarities between Gon and Knuckle and Shoot and Killwa, right down to their color palettes. We have two deeply thoughtful characters who act like edgelords despite being very afraid of everything that comes their way. Meanwhile, we have two extroverted, punchy people who are about living in the moment and enjoying what they can while they can. While Gon isn't at all a pacifist, he has and still is yet to actually get a full focused kill. Yes, he squished a bug in panic, but the fact that he's now making it clear that he's unwilling to hold back is really critical because it means he's willing to kill in cold blood. His use of Knuckles' weakness in that moment also can't be understated. He knew he couldn't win that fight against Knuckle, he told us so. What he also knew was that Knuckle is a big softie who wouldn't actually kill him if he tried his careless attack attempt, and that Killwa would help him. Essentially, he was counting on the weakness of those around him to compensate for his lack of ability. That said, if he'd managed to pull off the attack on Knuckle, it would have been part of the job and he'd have moved on because that's kind of how it's supposed to work. The outward softness is Knuckles' major downfall, while Gon's failure to predict Killwa's constant anxiety about situations is going to potentially be his. Meanwhile, Killwa has Bisky's secret and can't share it under pain of face breakage, but also, it seems Bisky didn't even need to attack him with her fist. She got him in the heart. What must it feel like for Killwa knowing deep down that he would do what he needs to do to save himself because that's what his family wants, rather than trying, ultimately, to save the boy he loves? He may not even be cognizant of it. Any awareness he has of what his brother did to him is sort of melted into fear, and when we get highly anxious, stressed, or triggered, we can fail to make or encode memories. Memories have to go through the making phase. You have to experience something, and then you have to go through a process that stores the memory for later. That's a little oversimplistic, but it's why if a kid's throwing a tantrum, you wait until they're done. Not because they can't hear you while they're screaming, but because they're so emotional they won't remember what you're saying when they have calmed down. When Killwa goes into assassin mode, does he remember what's happening, or is it activating a sleeper situation? Each time he's killed, it's largely been a response to heightened emotions or life or death. He's shown he has some control over it, but I think it's less controlled than we've been led to believe to now. I keep going back to the first time he killed someone with his strange spear hand situation, and it was such an immediate lashing out of emotion that I don't wonder if he remembers it, but whether he has control over it, whether it's a consequence of raised emotion. That's a deep dive into the psychology of trauma, but with Killwa it tends to be quite necessary, especially since we're about to see the two cowards face off. Now, cowardice is a fear response, so I do wonder what it is that Shoot's most afraid of. The fact that they exist, the fact that he has to fight them, or the response from his teacher if he fails, or something else entirely. If we assume Killwa's afraid of not being worthy of Gon, it makes his goal very simple, and if we assume Killwa's more afraid of dying because the curse says he must live, his bond with Gon becomes secondary, though it's still distressing, and maybe more distressing because he doesn't have a choice of what happens. I think what Bisky's done, giving him an ultimatum like this, is to push Killwa to the brink of friendship, the brink of family, testing his values and testing his willingness and ability to grow. It's like we've gone all the way back to the end of the first arc. Why hasn't Killwa fought for an entire month? What is he hiding from? Every step along the way, I've sort of assumed because he would show aspects of competence that he was growing with Gon. Now it's not that he's not capable, but if he's questioning that capability, she's right. He's lost before he's begun. That he's not telling Gon about it suggests that he genuinely doesn't have an answer either. I wonder whether Killwa has any doubts about Gon's friendship. Is a friend really your friend if they're willing to hurt you or get you into such dangerous situations? When is enough enough? I used to think Gon was a parallel for Colt, but it's Killua, isn't it? Gon is the instinctive ant, the ant who does what he must because the environment says he must. Killua, he considers the emotionality of it. He considers others. He considers Gon. Having seen Kite lose his arm trying to protect them, and in fact Kite has a similar color scheme to Killua, the same propensity to hide his eyes, the same ability to kill at a moment's notice because that is what is expected rather than what is wanted, and both are puppets. At the end of the day, Gon's fight with Knuckle wasn't important because of Gon's process. It was important because Killua was watching. Killua was the focus of this episode. Killua was the one judging whether it would be necessary to step in. If Knuckle had tried to kill Gon while he was down, Killua would have stepped in. I believe that. As it was, his eyes hardened, a sign of big emotion, or emotional blunting, we would call it, from that kid. And emotional blunting, while that self-serving, smothering love came into play, he picked him up, child style, and took him home, put him in bed. The Zoldyck family, for all their awful behaviors toward each other, are an abusively loving family, which doesn't make much sense, but kind of does. And Killua's taking those traits and placing them on Gon, knocking him out and smothering him in protection he hasn't actually asked for. It seems that abusive relationship works both ways. That was a lot. Sorry, that was a lot of psychology. I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, but for now, that is it from me. You can also click here, here, and here for other stuff. I will try to be less cerebral next time, and then I'll see you. That's right, I'll see you next time.